Sorry, I've just paused a bit because okay. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our session where we'll be covering the Ofsted registration webinar, which is tailored for those who are setting up children's home and supported accommodation, which is a setting for 16 plus. So the difference is if you are going for a children's home, that means you want to look after children who are under 16, and that is classed as a residential for children's home. Or alternatively, if you're going for the 16 plus, you are going for the child supported accommodation. So today's session will be covers we'll be talking about the different business models, and we'll also be talking about the process of how to register with Ofsted. So we hope you find today's session helpful, and we'll be introducing you to my colleague who is our compliance lead, who is in charge of the Ofsted registration in our organization. Brasso, welcome and thank you for joining.
Thanks, Angie, and good afternoon to the viewers. Thanks for joining, and I hope this conversation is going to help us. And again, the basic principle is iron sharpens iron. We're operating in an industry that is forever changing, so it's good practice that we share ideas. If you know something that we don't know, you share with us. None of us has a monopoly of ideas. This industry is changing. We don't know what's going to be happening next year, next month, or yesterday. We've got various issues arising from safeguarding, compliance issues. So it's very, very important that we always meet in such platforms like this, so that we can have a conversations and help each other. But the conversation today is primarily, as Angie has alluded to, is primarily about registering with Ofsted. And we are specific. It's about the children's home and supported accommodation. It's very, very important to have this conversation because some of us, me included, it's been difficult for us to be able to distinguish between these two regulations, the children's home, the 2015, which we are all familiar with, and this new regulation. We say it's new because in the eyes of law, something that was born in 2023 is still new. The supported accommodation regulations 2023. And I think we know the background to this. We know that prior to 2023, anyone accommodating young people 16 to 17, you didn't need to be registered with Ofsted. People were operating what used to be called the non-regulated or semi-independent. You just straight away accommodate young people, whether you have a contract with the local authority, and then there were no checks and balances. Such arrangements were mostly monitored by your local authority. But because of ongoing safeguarding issues, there has been some very, very serious incident. It then dictated that the Secretary for Education is given a mandate to manage this under Ofsted, which means anybody who's providing accommodation for young people 16 to 17 now is now expected to register with Ofsted under the Supported Accommodation Regulations 2023. So throughout this journey, we'll be comparing and contrasting and talking about what you need for registering under the 2015, what we need for registering under the 2023. But the difference here is age. And what we know is that the supported accommodation does not deal with children with complex needs. It's designed to support young people going into adulthood, so empowering them in terms of skills, independence, going to college, dealing with safer relationships, etc., etc. But for children requiring complex needs, you still have to be registered with the children's home, the typical 2015 children's home. So I thought it's very, very important that we have this background so that when we navigate through this journey, it gives at least viewers a clear picture of what they may want to register for. So it's the administration process, and as usual, there is documentation involved. So the first thing will be the enrollment. We're going to talk about the requirements. We're going to talk about the two key forms, the SC1 form, the SC2 form. We're going to talk about the registered manager and the responsible individual or nominated individual. And then we're going to go through the whole application process all the way to the fit for purpose interview, where Ofsted wants to visit you and check on your preparedness of the registration. So as I've said earlier, we need to be cognizant to the existence of these two regulations. We have the Supported Accommodation England Regulations 2023. It deals with supported accommodation for young people aged 16 to 17. We also have our traditional the Children's Home England Regulations 2015 that regulates the children from 0 all the way to 16 and beyond, depending on their specific needs. So this is the framework upon which you can register Ofsted. So for those who are planning to do the first thing before you register, I believe at this day you will have chosen whether it's the Supported Accommodation Regulations 2023 for young people. And normally on the Supported Accommodation Regulations 2023, we're talking about young people coming from care leavers. We're talking about unaccompanied young people, unaccompanied asylum seekers. We're talking about maybe children coming from the justice system. They want a home. They want to be supported to have a clean signposted journey towards adulthood. So I think in terms of the introductions we have here at this point, I think you are clear about which route to take. So the starting point in terms of the process is enrollment. It's a simple process whereby you tell Ofsted about your intention to apply for Ofsted. It's all electronic. So you create the gateway ID. There is a link here. I think the team will send the link on the chat or to your emails for you to enroll. So once you enroll, you create what you call a gateway ID. Depending on who's going to be helping you with the application, if you intend to use a third party, consultants, etc., make sure that you avoid putting security whereby every time they want to go into your portal, they have to send a message to your phone and then give them the code. I have experienced that because it causes so much delay. We are trying to access your portal, help you with your application. The code is being sent to your phone. Maybe you are doing a night shift, you are resting, you are sleeping. We have to wait for you. By the time you wake up, we're finished for the day. So if you are creating this gateway ID, be cautious of the security features. I'm not saying don't put security, but I'm just thinking about the inconveniences it may cause, particularly if you a third party is using your platform. So you've now enrolled. You've decided whether you're going for the 2015 or you're going for the 2023. The next thing is you'll have to download the necessary paperwork. One of the key forms, if you're applying for Ofsted, whether it's Supported Accommodation Regulation 2023 or whether it's the 2015, is the SC1 form. Very, very important document because it gives birth to whatever you want to establish. Within that SC one form. And again, you need to be careful about the information that's needed. Make sure that you collect, you assemble it before starting the application. So the SC1 form will be asking you about your business. It will be asking you about your company, whether it's a limited liability partnership, whether it's a limited company, holding company or subsidiary. You need to put that in the SC1 form. Again, you need to make declarations. If you have other children's home somewhere, you need to let Ofsted know. You need to talk about previous applications. Some of you may have an application that was refused before. You need to make a declaration on the S1 form. You need to talk about in this SC1 form, you need to talk about the services that you are going to offer, including the premises where services are going to be provided. You need to talk about roles and responsibilities. Now, Ofsted, like CQC, introduces 2 offices. We're going to talk about them shortly. You need to talk about financial information. You need to talk about, you need to have the policies and procedures that you are going to accompany your application. You need to have insurance. You need to have a planning permission for children's home. Now, it's very, very important when we talk about planning permission because the Supported Accommodation Regulations 2023 does not explicitly say you must have a planning permission. But the statement of purpose talks about making sure, assuring yourself that the premises are suitable. We are dealing with an application. We are supporting a client at the moment. They've submitted everything that they have, the HMO license and everything. But the inspector is saying he wants to see a planning permission. We've registered with one client with about 38 houses. They were all registered without any need for planning permission. But this one, he's going back to the statement of purpose saying you need to assure me. We've sent them all the environmental checklist, electricity, HMO license. We just received another email now. Is saying, no, I want a planning permission. So that's very, very tricky because inspectors have discretionary powers. Some of them, they understand. Some of them, they will create many rules between rules. Now they are saying they will be rejecting the application. And the challenge is, if they reject your application at this point, you forfeit your registration. There is a charge. I think it's 3,000 something, depending on how big your application is. So now, client is facing a potential of losing money because the inspector is adamant that they want a planning permission, even though Supported Accommodation Regulations 2023 is very, very silent on that. Finance references, if you plan to go to apply for children's home under the 2015, you need a finance reference. Very, very important in terms of preparing, because we know that traditionally we don't have the traditional banks. In the olden days, you can make an appointment with the bank manager. You go sit down and explain to them, they give you a reference. But nowadays it's difficult. Everything is online. You have to email, you have to chat, you have to be on hold. So it can be difficult to have a finance reference if you're applying for a children's home. So as part of your preparations, that's something that I will encourage you to pursue right at the beginning, at the very, very planning stage, and making sure that by the time you submit, you can deal with all the challenges and have the reference in place before submission. So this is all that goes in your SC1 form. You've got your S2 form that appoints the people who are going to manage your children's home or your supported accommodation. So you need to talk about the proposed service manager. You need to talk about the responsible individual. And equally, if you have a director who is going to be involved or who's going to be part of the management of the services, that director needs to be included in the application, simply because here you are dealing with children. So anybody in a position of authority who's going to come in contact with the children needs to be known. Sometimes you have directors who've got nothing to do with the administration of the business. They're not involved. They've got other things to do. But if you are a situation whereby maybe you are the director, you are the nominated individual, the registered manager, you need to make that declaration in the form so you are known that you'll be in contact with the children. So these are the very, very two important forms. Once you've identified whether you want to go for the children's home 0 to 15 or you want to go for the supported accommodation 16 to 17, you need to prepare to complete and submit these forms. Financial information, what do you need? You need to show financial ability to run the services. This includes 12 months cash flow focus, a comprehensive business plan, annual accounts audited, bank, a company's latest annual report from an accountant, bank reference. Even if you don't, I know some people will be saying, but ours is just a new company. Yes, you have to show alternative means of financial viability. Business plan, again, as part of your application, Ofsted wants you to have a detailed business plan that should include at minimum background information about company, where you are, who you are, the location or the house where children or young people are going to reside, giving a detailed description. Within that marketing plan, that business plan, you need to demonstrate that you have done the market analysis and you have a detailed marketing strategy, operational plan in terms of governance and leadership, financial plan, because finance is very, very key. Without money, you'll be putting young people at risk because you won't be able to pay for stuff. You won't be able to pay for logistic requirements, roles and responsibilities that are clearly defined. So it's not just a business plan, it's a detailed plan tailored to the services that you've applied for. Cash flow, again, you're expected to have a cash flow focus that sets out the project's monthly income and expenditure for the first 12 months. Some of the figures, you may have them. If you are renting a property, at least you can put an actual number. If you've already spent some money, you've bought some stuff, that can be summarized in this focus. As I've said earlier on, for the children's home, there is going in extra with a finance reference signed by your bank manager to accompany your comprehensive business plan. As I said, that's the homework. You need to make sure that you secure an appointment with your bank manager, whether you're doing it online. I know that even online, each and every business is appointed a bank manager or a team or group of people who are on the business section. So it's good practice to navigate, to phone and find out how can this happen. How can you get a reference? And both the application for children's home under the 2015 and the 2023, your application must be accompanied by supporting documents. I'm gonna talk about them, and one of them is the statement of purpose, both for children and young people, policies and procedures, insurance quotations, certificate. Now, the statement of purpose, very, very important document that gives birth to whether it's a children's home or it's a supported accommodation. So you need to think about the regulated framework that you need to undertake. So your statement of purpose, it needs to talk about the services that you want to provide, and it needs to reference to the regulatory framework. Very, very important. And as I said at the beginning, the supported accommodation regulations 2023 and the children's home as two different business models. Yeah. Particularly, we need to take note of the new supported accommodation. It's born out of the 8 principles. And if you look at those principles, it's all about independence. It's all about protecting the rights of these young people. They are called young people because they are not adults. The Children's Act 1989 did say they are children, but equally they have some form of autonomy. So the statement of purpose for supported accommodation regulations 2023 needs to demonstrate that flexibility, because for you to be able to empower young people to be adults, to go and live independently, there must be some form of flexibility. It's about positive enforcement and clearly defined outcomes. As part of your application, you need a copy of your insurance certificate that deals with to cover death, injuries, and public liability damages and other losses before you even start services or during the course of providing services. And all the premises that cater for children, young people, they need to be covered by a valid insurance. One of the accompanying documents is the guide. Whether you are applying for children's home under the 2015 regulations or you are applying for the supported accommodation under the 2015, you are expected to have a children's guide. Again, what's important is to distinguish between the two. If you are applying for children's home, the guidance will be clear. It comes with, curfews, etc., etc. For the supported accommodation, on the other hand, inspectors or Ofsted doesn't want to see things, restraint, curfews, etc., etc. So you are dealing with young people. Young people are allowed to have to be in relationships. They're allowed to go visit. They're allowed to go to work. So content and context and regulatory requirement for a supported accommodation and a children's home are going to be different. We have seen at the beginning, we were also getting it wrong because I deal with people who are applying for Ofsted. At the beginning, our guide was rejected because we were so consumed, we were so accustomed to the 2015. So we're talking about, our mobile phones being confiscated. We're talking about curfews, etc., etc. They would be saying, no, here, this is a supported accommodation. Look at the supported accommodation regulations 2023 and submit a new application, or even all the way to interviews. We found that people were going for interviews, their approach to interview questions, it was completely detached from what's expected from the supported accommodation regulations 2023 because we are so used to the children's home. So very, very important in terms of assembling the guide, depending on which services you want to apply for. Equally, you are expected for both children's home and supported accommodation, you're expected to have a contingent plan or a continuity plan that deals with your approach to eventualities, unforeseen circumstances, your approach to dealing with a situation whereby the accommodation has been deemed not to be fit for habitants, and what are the alternative arrangements that you put in place. And one other document that you need to prepare as well is the safeguarding policy. It's a given. We know that working with children, you are always expected to have a safeguarding policy. But again, it needs to reference the legal framework depending on which services you are providing. And that's where it becomes interesting because if you look at the safeguarding pathways for young people and for children, it's the same. You still have to include LADO. The whole process from disclosure to closure is all the same. But when it comes to the guide, there is some flexibility in expectations from young people and children. So again, depending on the services you've taken, it's very, very important to be cautious about wording that you put in each document. Complaints policy, equally, you are expected to have a comprehensive policy that enables young people and children to talk to you if they're unhappy. The document needs to demonstrate that the approach or the philosophy of the organization that enables young people to express their wishes and feelings, happy or not happy, and how you deal with given that young people may not have the mental capacity to, receive information and make informed decisions. So the complaints policy needs to be clear in that aspect. Again, one of the documents is the missing child policy. Very, very important. It differs. So a missing child policy for a children's home under the 2015 is always going to be different to a missing child policy for 16 and 17, because it needs to be clear about at what point do you say a child from 0 to 3 is missing, as opposed to at what point you say the young person is missing. Because for the young person, you can't just say 16 or 17, you can't just say they're missing. You can't just make a police report. You need to demonstrate you've exhausted all alternative avenue. Is she not with her boyfriend? Did she not go to work? All those questions. But for the child, on the other hand, your policy has to be explicitly stating at what point, how do you deal with the situation where the child come back, therapeutic interventions, etc., etc. Very, very important policy to accompany. Again, behavior management policy. It needs to talk about, particularly for 16 to 17 again, behavior management policies about positive behavior. Because the 16 to 17, as I said, young people are pursuing a journey to independence. So you're not going to be motivated by keeping them safe. You need to take some risk. You want them to be in relationships. You want them to travel, to go to college, etc., etc. If a young person has got some challenging behavior, you can't lock them in. Make sure that the plan talks about one-to-one support, whereby somebody, an adult, can accompany them to college. So you need to be clear in these policies. For children, 0 to 15, one of the accompanying policies is the counter-bullying and harassment policy. You need to talk about how, as a children's home, you prevent, you identify, and you respond to all forms of bullying, harassment, or any other things that may affect the welfare of young people. You need to talk about the zero tolerance approach, including defining it. What is bullying? What are the processes of reporting? How do you make sure that children are comfortable in reporting issues of bullying? And how you investigate and supporting both the victims and the perpetrators, because sometimes it's a child-to-child situation. So your policy must be very, very comprehensive. In addition, those who want to go to do children's home, one of the documents that accompany your application is the risk assessment and emergence procedure that talks about how do you identify and manage risk to keep these young people safe. You need to talk about you need to have clear procedures for handling emergencies such as fire, medical incidents, missing children, as well as clear platforms for evacuation, and your staff training approach in making sure that your staff are equipped to deal with emergency situations. For children's home, equally, you're expected to have a whistleblowing policy where staff can report concerns about poor practice, misconduct, or abuse within the children's home. The policy needs to demonstrate that you do have, as an organization, a culture of transparency, a culture for accountability, and safeguarding in line with all legal framework. So that's everything about all the documentation that accompanies. I believe at this point, I have chosen whether it's the children's home or the supported accommodation. You've got all the documentations, and you also need to talk about what goes into S2 form, the people who are going to manage the services. That's the nominated or the responsible individual. You've got the service manager. I spoke about any directors who may want to be involved in the services. They need to be included. So let's talk about the nominated individual or the responsible individual. This is somebody who's very, very senior. In most cases, this person is it could be the director of the company. Some big companies, they employ nominated individuals or responsible individuals. They're expected to have an enhanced DBS, a full CV, qualifications. Both the children's home and the supported accommodation, they have a job description. They have qualification criteria.
Stop barking. If you say hello, go and say hello.
Okay.
You're so fluffy. It's not a husky, is it?
No, Malamute.
Fine. My partner desperately wants a husky, but we've found a family, so it's another one on the list.
Hi, Maddie.
Maybe we may need to mute
Lewis.
Fatima. So
Yeah,
Is shadow.
Yeah, very shepherd-like.
okay.
That's
So
good dogs, aren't you?
okay.
Just make sure I didn't. I'm listening to.
Okay. Do apologize. I think there is a technical issue there. Okay. Thank you. I was talking about qualifications for the responsible individuals. Is level 5 diploma or any other qualifications that demonstrate that one has got leadership. It's interesting because there has been some issues about what's required for the supported accommodation. The job description, if you look at Regulation 12 at C, they are saying one should have worked as a manager in a residential settings for children and adults. There has been a contention because some inspectors would be saying, somebody has an experience that worked in a care home. They are saying, but you need experience to work with children. But if you look at 12C, Regulation 12C, it explicitly talks about the experience of children working with children or adults in residential setting. You also need professional references. You also need your addresses. You also have the demonstrate evidence of the right to work in the UK if you are not a UK citizen. Similarly, the director of a company who wants to be involved is same expectations, DBS, qualifications, references, addresses, and right to work in the United Kingdom. And then once all this is done, the last thing is the declaration form. Once you've completed both the forms, the Form 1 and Form 2, and once you've identified at this stage, I assume you'll have chosen whether it's the children's home or is the supported accommodation. Now, I'm just going to go through the step by step, as I said, assuming now everything's done, and then going through the 3 stage. So stage number 1, once you've done your application, simple, you submit your application electronically. Everything is done electronically. Very, very important at this stage. Once you've submitted your application, you need to be vigilant. Ofsted will come back to you for clarity, for more information, questioning the information that you've put, and give you an opportunity to respond. But normally, I know that when you submit any emails that coming from Ofsted, they'll prompt you on the email that you've used, and then you log in, you make some amendments. So if Ofsted is happy, everything, and they are okay with your application, you've submitted it, you'll then need to pay. There is a fee that's payable to Ofsted. And we know that with the supported accommodation, people have been able to get away and make 2 applications without having to pay fees, but it explicitly says once application is submitted and assessment is done, you pay the fees, and things go wrong, whether you want to withdraw, you forfeit the fees. But at this declaration, once you pay the fees, you get the URN number. We know that there are some local authorities that were working in hand with Ofsted because of the high demand of supported accommodation. People were allowed to start accommodating young people for the supported accommodation with the URN, waiting for registration. But it doesn't automatically mean that you'll be registered. We know lots of organizations that were given a leeway to continue looking after children while waiting for applications. But it doesn't mean that when they come for inspection, you automatically get a license. You can be rejected and being told to, surrender children at a registered children's home. Once everything's done, there will be a site inspection. While you're waiting for site inspection, we always advise you to make sure that you have all the policies and procedures in place. The accommodation is fit for purpose. You've done all the risk assessment. The registered manager and the nominated individual is very much aware of the regulatory framework they've applied for. If you're going for the 2015, you've got the all the accompanying with all the accompanying handbooks and policies and procedures. You need to be able to answer any questions relating to the services you're about to register. So it's a very, very complex arrangement when they're doing a fit for purpose, because they will be checking at the accommodation, they'll be checking at the paperwork, they want you to explain things in detail. Once they are happy, you'll be granted a permission. As simple as that. And being given a permission, being granted a license, that's not the end of the journey, because we know that running a children's home or a supported accommodation, you are assuming parental responsibility. You are a parent. So it doesn't mean that once the child you've given birth, that's the end. You have to nurture. You have to have an ongoing compliance systems, checks and balances, because Ofsted will be coming to check. They may come back again unannounced. They may give you a day to come and check your work. If you are doing the children's home, you've got Reg 45 visits from an independent individual. But you must always maintain compliance with all the regulations and standards once you've registered. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the key differences of the supported accommodation and the children's home. I think what's very, very important here is the age. 0 to 15, that's the children's home 2015. And children may continue to live in a children's home post 15 if they have complex needs that cannot be addressed into a supported accommodation. The supported accommodation is 16 to 17. These are children who are able. Most of them, they are independent. They may have some underlying needs, some of them with learning disability, but they can be empowered to go and live independently in a supported living environment post 17. So that's the key difference. Again, the supported accommodation regulation 2023, it comes with the principles, the 8 principles. I will encourage you guys to just search them, the principles. They talk, if you look at them, it's all about empowering young people. So you need to make sure that your focus is how you're going to empower young people. 0 to 15, you are a shepherd. You are looking after really, really young people who are very, very vulnerable. So your approach is going to be very, very more focused on the physical being and the etc., etc. So that's the very, very key difference. So that's what I have for you in terms of setting up. If you have any other questions specifically for the services that you want to undertake and you think I might be helpful, I think my team will put all the contact details where we can see how we can help you. But thanks for joining. I hope, as I said, iron sharpens iron. I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well. Thank you very much. Over to you, Angie.
Thank you very much, Brasso, for such an insightful session. Please continue to screen share the maybe just one page because we can see your screen. So I'm just going to quickly go through the questions, which we hope. I always say, please ask some questions because this also helps other delegates who might be here not realizing that they actually have a question. And just by asking the question on here on the platform, we get to engage and we hope we'll be able to answer your questions. So the first question is from Rachel. She says, is there an option to leave this section blank if you are taking over an existing or already Ofsted registered? So already an already registered service. So I'm not sure if it looks like she's turned her camera on. She might want to clarify the question. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. So it was around the location assessment and the building information, the planning permission. Would you still need to submit evidence of that if the service is existing, already operating, already registered with Ofsted, and it's just a change of provider?
Yes. Is it, are you talking about a care home that's registered to a certain
A children's
legal
home.
entity,
Yes.
and then another children's home is taking over?
Yes.
Yes. If say if the for instance, the environmental risk assessment are still valid, they can be transferred to your business. If you've done all the electric checks and the gas and they're saying they're valid for 2 years,
Okay.
and within those parameters of 2 years, you don't have to do a new one.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And equally, the planning permission is given to that. If that house is deemed to have the planning permission is still valid, it doesn't have to be for you. You can still use it. But there will be things that like insurance. Obviously, insurance is that's a legally binding agreement between two entities. So you'll need to have your own insurance.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Rachel. The next question is from Mandy. She says, sorry to rewind, but in terms of the planning permission, in C2 planning is C2 planning preferred, or would the C3B change of use sufficient? I've seen both be successful, but don't understand the defining factor.
Okay. What's the question? Sorry.
So
okay. We're talking about the class here.
Yes,
Wait, let's see.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she wants to ask the question or you understood the question from my reading. Do you want me to read it again?
I think I understand. So everything is determined by the services you are. For instance, if you are going to apply for supported accommodation, the guidance of supported accommodation establishes what they call categories of accommodation. There is category 1, which is a solo, where somebody lives on their own. So if you are applying for supported accommodation and you go for category 1, you are okay with it's just like any other house on the street. But if you are applying for supported accommodation, then you go for category 3, which is what they call a non-ring fenced. where you're going to have more than 2 or 3 individuals in there. Then you are expected to have your HM house of multiple occupants license, preferably a C4. And you have the C4 again on the supported accommodation. Statement of purpose does not explicitly say you need a license, but because CQC inspectors work on discretionary powers, I'm having an example of, as I'm speaking now, somebody's phoning, because CQC, Ofsted are saying he's given them the C4 registration with the HMO license and everything. They've just come back now and say, we want to see, I'll read the email. It's very, very interesting, because this inspector seemed to be very, very, so he's saying, sorry, I just have to contextualize. He says, it is clear that the premises are regarded as HMO and there is a license in place for their use as such. However, because on the planning license, on the HMO license, there is a clause which says the license that don't grant permission for planning. It doesn't say planning permission. But the inspector is now capitalizing on that to say, I want a planning permission. So it's very, very gray on the supported accommodation side of things. And because the regulations, the supported accommodation regulations 2023 does not give guidance, I would say maybe it's subject to being misunderstood. And some may use it as a reason not to grant license or to grant license, depending on the inspector you are working with. So it will be good practice. That's an area that we are not experts, but it will be very, very important before you submit an application. If you are, I know like this individual is renting this house from an agent, you'll need to talk to them. You need to explain to them the services that you want to provide. Or maybe you may need to seek clarity with the local authorities planning permission so that you produce, at least you are ready for any follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. I hope that answers your question, Maddie. But
It did, thank you. I also want to apologise earlier because I was listening to the call whilst I was walking my dogs and put my phone back in my bag and it unmuted. So apologies, that probably disturbed you all. I heard you go back into your flow, so I thought, okay, I won't. I'll talk at the end, but apologies.
it's okay. These things happen. We do tend to multitask. It's a good skill. Okay, so the next question again from Maddie. She says, I've never heard about people using C4. I'll have a look into that too. Thank you. I don't think that's a question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so any more questions? We've got a few minutes to take questions. If you've got any questions, we are happy to answer the questions. Okay, so if there are not any other questions, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining today. I will then turn off the live streaming, which was on YouTube.